does not want to bring them home. So he's made us a special offer where each book is only $5.
Wow.
And then I said to him, what I would like to do is I would like to do something special. So if you buy 2 copies, it'll be $10 and I'll make up the difference. Okay? So just see me.
Generosity is generous.
But he said that he would even autograph it, which is wonderful.
Thank you.
Already have.
Give me
Great.
Oh, right, okay, great. Welcome, to our second Holy Synod in lovely Minnesota. I think I've met all of you, but I am Kenny Christensen Barker. I am part of the Synodal Council. I'm the treasurer. I'm also a member of St. Francis of Assisi in Dunedin. And I am also standing in for the one and only Cheryl Redker. I have very big shoes to fill today, so please forgive me. She was I offered to do this for her. I had no idea what I was in for, and but I'm glad to be here. So we're going to get started. First of all, with our prayer. On the left side of your packets, there's a prayer, and Bishop Gordon, do you want to lead us in prayer?
Let us pray together. Oh God,
We gather together in your name. Draw us closer to each other through you. Send your Holy Spirit among us to guide us, direct us toward true harmony, honoring our diversity. Grant us integrity in our actions and lead us to greater awareness. Bring us into the spiritual transformation beyond simply accomplishing tasks. Open our hearts and our minds to love and understanding. Lead us to unity, our way together in you, so that our journey will keep us in the light of your truth, justice, and love. All together with your name and your Son, and our Savior, Jesus Christ.
Thank you. We'll be starting each morning with that prayer. Just a few housekeeping items before we start with naming our bishops. And that is for those of you who just arrived at the bathrooms. If you go out this way to the right, follow where the track. The hallway. Yeah, well, the hallway. Yeah, there's the men and the women's bathrooms. Also, in your rooms, there's also things like if you're a smoker, you can only smoke outside. Please keep in mind you have an owl, but we need to speak one at a time so that our Zoomers can hear us, because it will follow the voice that is speaking. So we want to try to keep one voice at a time so that they can be included. And good morning, Zoomers. Let's see. Also, you'll see some folks taking pictures. Bishop Gordon and Brother Ray started a Holy Synod Facebook page. If you haven't already been, Bishop Dwayne, I'm so sorry. Bishop Dwayne started a Facebook page for Holy Synod, and if you have pictures and you would like to upload them and you don't know how, please see him, and he would love to upload those pictures to our Facebook page so everyone can share it. Your packets include everything you're ever going to need. We do have an affirmation process later, so please make sure to read the affirmation process in your packet so that you are familiar with what we need to do today. Okay.
Yes, you mentioned that if we have pictures, would you like me to take some pictures throughout the day?
Sure, everybody's welcome
Everybody
to
share.
Okay, take all right, sir. Go ahead.
And please know as well, the meeting is being recorded, so all of it's on video, and we'll retain that as well.
Okay, great, thank you. I asked the bishops if I could share a some thoughts. I have a girlfriend, she's a spiritual leader, she's also a personal coach, and she sends out like blogs once in a while, and she had one about Pentecost, and I thought it was lovely and asked her permission if I could share it with you, so I'd like to start with that. Her name is Cinda, and she says, "Hey friends, have you felt that quiet stirring in your soul that something is shifting, even if you can't quite name it or know what it really might look like? It's more than restlessness. It's more than a passing thought. It's often how God begins to prepare us, not just for change, but for the next season of becoming." This week, for Pentecost, so it makes sense to recognize that we may go on internally, is also connecting with what we are sensing externally. Maybe you've heard the word in church settings, or seen it on a calendar, and wondered what it actually meant. The little secret, I knew it was coming this weekend, so I did some searching on what Pentecost is about. It brought to mind the story of the upper room, where all the disciples gathered together and something powerful happened that included the birthing of something new, the church. And what if I told you Pentecost isn't just a moment in history, it's a season for your soul. The word Pentecost comes from the Greek Pentecoste, which means 50th. Pentecost marks 50 days after Passover and was originally a Jewish festival called the Feast of Weeks, a harvest celebration and a time of bringing the first fruits to God in gratitude. In that very room, the Holy Spirit introduced himself with a wind. Language barriers were broken, and a powerful moment of spiritual awakening along with birthing something new happened. But it wasn't random. It was deeply connected to growth. The very season of Pentecost was already about harvest. God chose that day to show us something. The seeds he plants will bear fruit, and he sends his Spirit to make sure they do. Pentecost is here to remind you that God fulfills his promises and that he empowers us to grow. It's the moment when the waiting turns into becoming, when presence turns into purpose, when those who had been hiding in fear were filled with the power to speak, move, and carry the message of Jesus into the world. And here's the part that I love. It wasn't about striving. It was about surrender. The disciples didn't perform their way to power. They waited in obedience, and the Spirit came. In your life, in my life, there are areas where we've all been digging deep, places where we've waited, prayed, or even wrestled. Pentecost says, God has not forgotten you. He sees the seeds you planted in quiet faith. And here's the beautiful thing. His Spirit is coming to water them. One of the things I often say is, you can't grow without digging. Sometimes God invites us to dig deeper, not to punish us, but to prepare us, to till this hard soil, to break up the ground, to make space for his Spirit to move. Pentecost shows us that once the soil is ready and the seed is planted, God brings the fire, the wind, the life. That's what he wants to do in you, not just once, but again and again. Because growth isn't a one-time event, it's a sacred rhythm. If you're reading this and wondering if this applies to you, thanks for asking this, because I have to share it with you. You are deeply loved, fully seen, and forever adored by the one who created you. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't need a platform or even a plan. The only thing you need is a heart that's open, and God will meet you there. Whether you're in a planting season, a pruning season, or starting to see signs of fruit, Pentecost was your reminder. The Spirit has come, and he hasn't forgotten you. Thank you for letting me share that. I promise. So now to meet the president. Meet the bishop. And Bishop Gordon, Bishop Dwayne, of course, Bishop Michael, and our one and only Bishop Martin. So, Bishop Gordon, would you like to start talking a little bit? Oh, I'm starting this way. Okay, Bishop Gordon, would you like to tell us a little bit about you, and then we'll open it up for questions afterwards.
My name is Gordon Barkalow. I'm Bishop of the Diocese of Pastoral Care. Let's see, I've been in ministry about 56 years. Originally starting as a chaplain with the Boy Scout troop that I was in. My spiritual journey includes being baptized in the Baptist tradition, receiving the Holy Ghost in the holiness tradition with the Salvation Army, being confirmed in the Episcopal Church. I was originally ordained a deacon with the Metropolitan Community Churches, and then went on and became a deacon in the old Catholic tradition, and then a priest and now a bishop. I'm a professional clinical chaplain. I serve at Mondor Police and Fire Department. All these are volunteer positions. Mondor Police and Fire. I serve with Cornerstone Hospice. I serve UF Health System at the Leesburg Hospital. I serve with Solaris Nursing Homes and with Alto Assisted Living Facility. Let's see, I'm originally from Michigan. That's 28 moves ago. I deeply miss my husband, who died last year, after 47 years doing that. So that's a little bit about me to get us started.
I'm Bishop Dwayne. I grew up Church of Christ. Journeyed after meeting Brother Ray, my spouse. We met in '93. I journeyed through the Episcopal Church. I was also a member of MCC at the time. Was ordained in the Ecumenical Anglican Church with Bishop Rick Hollingsworth. We later merged with the Ecumenical Catholic Communion. That's where I met Bishop Steve. And we were journeying with the Ecumenical Catholic Communion and left them because of, we believe that they left the old Catholic heritage or the ecclesiology. And so our diocese, the Diocese of Mid-America, then later joined the OCC. We're a small diocese, but we now have a vicariate in Colombia, and we also have a in Mexico City. So we are multinational diocese.
That's it.
That's one now.
Is that all?
They threw good parties, I'll tell you that. So, I was adopted at 3 days old. I was born in Bangor, Maine, and I was adopted at 3 days old by the most wonderful Italian parents I could ever ask for. So, although people tell me that I look Irish, I claim Italian. And my parents were the ones who instilled in me a great love for the faith. We were at church all the time. Anything that was going on, we would be there. And I became an altar boy, and I loved doing that, and I wanted to become a priest. And some well-meaning nun in high school said to me, "You're not priest material, so forget it." So she wouldn't recommend me to the seminary. So, which was fine, because I wanted to have a family. So I wanted to be a priest, but I wanted to have a family, and the family part won out. So I got married, and Kimberly is my pride and joy. I spent the first 25 years of my life in the broadcasting business, the radio broadcasting business. And as Bishop Marty always reminds me, he says, "You have a face for radio." I take that as a compliment. And radio changed so much that I ended up doing other things. And then as I said during my homily, I was ordained a priest 31 years ago. And I went out on a limb and started doing chaplaincy work. And I started out as a nursing home chaplain, and I loved it. I was the guy who, don't come near me with any icky smells or anything disgusting. Don't come near me because I'll hurl. So what do? I'm a chaplain, I'm a nursing home. You get through that pretty quickly when you're in a nursing home. And then one day somebody came to me and said, she was one of the hospice nurses that came to the nursing home. She said, you know, I think you would be a really good hospice chaplain. She said, are you interested? I said, I don't really know that much. You know, can you tell me? And so she told me, and she said, would you at least interview? And I did. And then I did that for 25 years. And that was the most rewarding work I've ever done. That was really, hospice chaplaincy is life-changing. For any of you that have an opportunity to even volunteer, right, for hospice, can be volunteers, it will change your life. I encourage you to do that. So now I live in the town next to Hershey, Pennsylvania. And yes, I have chocolate in my room. I forgot to bring it down. I'll get to it. But I work for a nonprofit agency that provides services for people who are blind and visually impaired. I'm the on-call guy for 16 funeral homes for anyone who wants to have a service and is not affiliated with any church or particular denomination. I provide the services for them. And then I do Catholic Communion, which takes up a lot of time. That's really great time. It's enjoyable. So, did I forget anything? The rest is Oh, you will? You'll have questions? Oh, okay, good.
Cool. Good morning, everyone. We met already. Marty Shanahan. I missed the memo about being a cleric, so I apologize for that. Let's see, I originally grew up in Nebraska. Grew up in a rather large family. There were 7 of us, and my mom was actually Missouri Synod Lutheran, and my dad was Irish Catholic, and they were disowned by both families when they got married. And so talk about spending a lot of time in church. We used to go to the Lutheran, we'd go to the Catholic Mass first, and then after that we went to the Lutheran service. So I was confused when I grew up because I didn't know if I was supposed to genuflect or not genuflect, or kneel or not kneel, and which church it was in. Hence, I wasn't sure about Michael's face or not being the radio. Just confused, you know. Anyway, thrilled to death. I swore when I was growing up, I swore I would never go to college in my life. I ended up going to seminary directly out of high school, which I swore I would never do. And I didn't leave for 9 more years. So I went to undergraduate seminary and then major seminary. I left prior, I was in Roman Catholic Seminary, of course, and left 4 hours before my diaconate ordination. And my family was all up here in Minnesota to celebrate my diaconate ordination, and I had to turn to them and say, I stayed until they approved me, just to prove them wrong. So they approved me for ordination. I wanted to prove to them that ordination did not preclude marriage, you know. And until they said, yes, you're called to ordination, I said, great, I'm not going to do it, but thank you for the affirmation. And then I had already met my wife, who worked at the seminary at that point. So Kathy and I got married. So I've been in ministry for 38 years, and I spent 17 years as a chaplain with the St. Paul Police Department. I spent 7 years as a chaplain with Catholic Charities, along with Corinne. And that's where I met Corinne as a chaplain with Catholic Charities. I spent the last 12 years as a chaplain in our maximum security prison system here in the state of Minnesota, and retired from that 2 years ago. And because of some health reasons, I'll be retiring as bishop in July. I'm still hanging on until November, October, whatever. I'm still sticking with bishops' meetings and stuff because we're in the process of deciding how we do this as a diocese stepping forward. But yeah, so I don't know. I have 7 brothers and sisters. I was ordained as a permanent deacon. Served I served 7 years as the pastoral associate because they couldn't call me the associate pastor. So I was 7 years as a pastoral associate at a parish not too far from the current parish that I served. And then 19 years ago, we started Spirit of Hope. And we started with a small group of 12 people, and we're still going 20 years later, almost 20 years later. Yeah, I think that's good. That's good. I'm a recovering alcoholic too, so, if I say, I'm recovering, don't freak out when they go to another meeting. Yeah, we're good. I got lots of stories around that, and lots of prison stories. Most of them aren't told in public.
You know where bodies are buried?
And the song, I have friends in low places? Lots of them.
So I'd like to open it to questions. What questions do you have of any of our bishops? Okay, I'll start. So I'd like to know, and you can answer, when did you get the calling? Like, what was that moment that you felt God called you to do this work? Go ahead, Bishop.
4th grade.
4th grade.
4th grade. Actually, I'll say this, and then I'm going to go get some water because I'm going to run out. 4th grade, my aunt was actually my 4th grade teacher. Talk about small town Nebraska. My aunt was my 4th grade teacher. We had to write a storybook, and the felt paper, or what do you call it? Paper, whatever. We had to write a paper about what we wanted to be when we grew up. And I wrote that I wanted to be a priest. And the day I went into seminary, she gave it back to me.
That's cool.
6 years old.
Wow.
And I can remember it distinctly. And I think it was due to hanging out with priests. I hung out with Roman Catholic priests who were young guys. And I will tell you, and I will tell you, and I will tell you, never once did any of them ever do anything that was, you know what I'm talking about. Never. Never. They were the best guys. I loved them, and they instilled in me a vocation that never left me. What is this?
Chocolate.
From where?
Not
I'll see her, Linda.
Thank you, Brother.
So, I was confused, because like I said, I grew up Church of Christ.
Yeah.
And I lived in a small town, population 1,205, and none of the church buildings were ever locked. There was no meeting. Your front door was never locked. And I went to the church one time. I walked to the church and prayed, and I was like, okay, God, use me for something, but I knew what the worship that I experienced in the Church of Christ wasn't quite the right fit for me. So I didn't know what it meant. All I knew is that I wanted to give myself to God to do whatever. And the thought of preaching, oh my God, that was scary. And I actually was traumatized because growing up Church of Christ, on Wednesday nights, we went to church 3 times a week. And on Wednesday nights, all the little boys from age of 5 on up had to lead a song on Wednesday night before Bible study. And when my voice changed, I hit an octave that wasn't on the register, and I got humiliated, and I quit. I wouldn't do it. And so speaking or singing in public was just terrifying to me. And then that got put on the back shelf as I dealt with my sexuality and stuff like that. But after meeting Ray, both of us were both committed to our own parishes, very involved and stuff. And he went to Prague for 6 months. And I was by myself, and it was Lent, and I was really digging into Lent. And that's when I started going Okay, there's something else I need to be doing here. I began talking, and interestingly, I talked to an Episcopal priest, Ray's pastor, not my pastor, about pursuing ordination. He's like, you need to go somewhere else. It won't happen in this diocese. So, it was a circuitous route, but
How old are you?
when I prayed, I was 11. I was 11. Yeah.
It's interesting how young you are.
Yeah.
Is she 40?
Well, as I mentioned, I was chaplain to the Boy Scout troop when I was 13. I had probably about 3 or 4 years before that, been thinking about ministry and what can I do. And my family had changed from the Baptist church to the Salvation Army, and they have an organization called Future Officers Fellowship, because good ministers are called officers. And so I was very active in that. And of course, they were not very pleased with my sexuality. And so that started my journey, my ecumenical indigestion journey. But that probably started at home because we were raised Baptist and then went to the Salvation Army. My brother, who's 7 years older than I am, wound up being a minister in the missionary church. And as he said, one step up from black bumper Mennonites. And he wound up being the professor and dean of Christian education at Fort Wayne Bible College in Fort Wayne, Indiana. My older sister married an independent Bible minister. And my parents eventually became lay ministers with the Salvation Army and ran the home for women and children in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So, yeah.
Great story.
Candy, before we go on, I'm sorry, I just want to let the people online know that if you have a question you want to put for us, feel free to put it in the chat and I'll read it off for everybody. That way it makes it easy for you all. Okay, sorry.
Correct.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, I think speaking specifically as a bishop and, you know, maybe in this time and place or within the last year, what feels like the most challenging aspect of your work?
Besides that question?
Yeah, right. You could.
So the most challenging aspect?
Or yeah, just what is challenging for you to be a bishop? Like what's the in what you feel comfortable? What's hard in this work you do?
I would have to say that trying to go up against the news reports saying that we live in a post-Christian world, that Christianity is fading, Christianity is dead, Catholicism is dead. You know, that kind of negativity, when we talk to real people and we know that Catholicism is not dead, and that you look at this, if Catholicism was dead, why are we here? Why bother? We could have taken this weekend off and done something else. I think a great challenge, and I don't know if my brothers will agree with me, is getting young people to embrace the faith. Getting young people to embrace any faith is challenging. Being a young person is challenging. So there's that. And then I would have to say, and I'm not speaking for them, for me, the inconsistency of commitment. That people come to Mass, then they don't come the next week. And then they don't come the week after that, but then they'll come the week after that. Where we try to instill the sense of community and how important it is for us to be together weekly And we understand that, you know, life happens. There are things that occur that somebody needs to take a weekend off, but it almost seems like it's just erratic. And I think the way to build a community is through consistency.
You get the rotation there's a rotation that goes on with our parishioners, and it's like, I have now figured out the rotation. I'll lift up three. The first one is, I did not intend to ever be a bilingual priest, pastor, bishop. Wasn't on my radar screen. And lo and behold, last of April, first week of May, I kept on Ray. Who would have ever thought that I would be in Colombia doing 3 masses in Spanish? What a sick and twisted sense of humor God has.
And in ordination and confirmation.
And First Communion. Who would have thought that? Not on my radar. Second thing is, my congregation is probably young people. And trying to reach and teach young kids who have no concept of who God is, much less concepts of spirituality, prayer, worship. No concept. How do you begin trying to teach that when your attention span is 2-second sound bites? It's just a real challenge. And then it's not being reinforced at home. So it feels like a struggle. And then the third thing is, because my congregation, this is as a pastor of a predominantly Latino congregation, where really Ray and I are the only Grigos in the congregation. And with the current administration, it's decimating my congregation. They're hiding. They're afraid. And just when we were getting good traction, it all goes to heck and handtastic. So those are my 3 challenges. And then also trying to rein in some.
Are any of them here?
No.
I would say one of my big challenges is trying to deal with the nuns. And I don't mean the ones that wear the outfit. All those folks that when you say, oh, what's your faith background? What are you doing for spiritual fulfillment now? Because the thing, especially down by us in Florida, right, people are spiritual, but not religious. I can pray on the golf course. Well, they can pray on the golf course, is what they're saying. You know, and yes, you can. But as we prove here, there's a lot to be said for being in community, for supporting each other, for praying for each other, for lifting each other up when we have challenges in our lives, and celebrating together when we have joys. You don't get that by being a nun. When they say, what is your religious affiliation? Well, none. So that right now is one of the biggest challenges that I have.
For me, I think it's a great question, number one. Number two, I think the greatest challenge, excuse me, the greatest challenge for me right now is understanding how we as church, and I'm not just talking us, I'm talking us, how do we as church live and work and pray and eat and in this current society, with this administration, with these things that are happening. I mean, I'm thrilled to death to be able to walk tomorrow afternoon with Corinne through the principles of Catholic social teaching, but every one of those principles are being threatened today. Every single one of them. And how can the church speak to the world with a language of relevance and impact in our current situation. That's the biggest challenge for me. How can we be relevant and impactful in this world? Because I believe we can, and I believe we have a role. I believe the gospel calls us to involvement, probably more than all of us are comfortable with. Yeah. We've got some really good questions coming through the chat too, so.
Do you want to?
Sure. So Rosemary Burdett, she wrote, what do you see in the next 5 years for our church?
Being kind of new to the Old Catholic Communion, I was a visitor at the last Synod 2 years ago. But being kind of new to the Old Catholic Communion, I think we're going to grow. I really do, because I see people who have a passion for the gospel, for living it out, and for being with each other in the groups that we have. When we look at where we were with the diocese 2 years ago and where we are now. And it's not, oh, the word is getting out there. It's that the word is being experienced, is being lived, is being given to each other. And I think that a true and faithful witness, when you live out that gospel message, that's, it's like, who is it said the only way to change people's minds is one at a time, one on one. And that's the truth of it. And that's what we're seeing, I think. So I think we're going to see, and I'm not about numbers. We talked about that earlier. I'm not about numbers. I'd rather have 5 committed people than 500 people who are like, come and do the forms and go.
I'd say, I don't know what I see in the church in the next 5 years, or what the church would look like in the next 5 years. I preached this several times already. I do believe in 5 years, maybe even 10. I do not believe it'll look like what it looks like now. That's about the only thing I can say for sure. I don't think it'll look like, I think our communities are going to look different. I think our commitment levels are going to look different. I think our presence in the world is going to look different. I do firmly believe that we'll do the best we can possibly do in preserving those things that are essential to being Catholic. But I do believe that we'll be Catholic in a new way. And I think we'll do it differently.
Do I have any thoughts?
Anything you can share?
I'm cautiously optimistic, but I've been cautiously optimistic for 31 years. And not that I get disappointed, but many times I've come to these meetings and the faces keep changing. And the level, as I said before, of commitment drops off some. So we have people who were here last time that are not here this time. And there'll be people next time who were here this time who will be here next time. I think that question really needs to be answered by all of you. We don't sit up here as the 5 guys with all the answers. What do you think the church is going to look like in 5 years? And more importantly, what do you want the church to look like in 5 years?
I'm going to say what we allow the church to look like in 5 years. Do we want to allow it to change and grow? We have vicarious in Colombia. So part of our communion is not even represented here because they're in Colombia. They can't travel to the U.S. and they're brown skinned. So we have a good contingent that is Latino, speaking Spanish. Are we going to embrace that?
I have a question. You said, do we want to allow it to change and grow? But isn't change what brought us here? So why would we want to allow it to change even more? I mean, I made a note here that said that one of the things that we need to do is to overcome all the damage that is done or was done by other denominations, other churches in the past. And in doing that, maybe it is bringing about some change, but that's the change that got us here. So I think we need to reinforce that and move forward. That's my thought.
Is there a difference between change and growth?
Growth is change, right?
When you grow, you die.
Yes.
Yeah.
In 5 years, I'm gonna be old. And so is everybody who's around me. And that's one of our dynamics that's hard for us. Because we don't have to follow us. And that was always the way churches made do before, you know, parent to kid, kid to parents, blah, blah, blah. And that's not there in any of the churches anymore. So it is hard to say how we can maintain when we will lose more people than probably we will gain. And that's somehow we can pray that we have enough younger ones who come in, who believe in what we do and see it as a new way or a better way to be Catholic, a better way to have Eucharist, and then follow that dream for us.
Can I challenge a little bit? I want you to consider your communities at home. What will the faces of the communities at home look like in 5 years? Will some of them not be there
Well, some of them won't.
because of they aged out?
Yes.
And if that's the case, what are we doing to bring in the younger people? Or are we just wanting to take care of the older folks?
On that point, I agree with you 1,000%, of course. And I think that we need to be more aggressive in identifying who we are. From the national scheme, we have vehicles like the NPR. We should be identifying ourselves out there, taking the initiative to say who we are and what we stand for. That way we can grow. I think we need to be more involved in our communities, very active in local activities with the Chamber of Commerce and with the, as one example, offering ourselves to be of service to other ministries. We do that in Dunedin, and it's.
You should follow, want to follow.
What's that?
You're the one to follow. Yes,
Me.
that's you.
Whatever, but I think we have it within our capability, but I think we ought to put a game plan together and say, let's set this up as our goals for this year, next year, and year following. That way we have something to strive for, as opposed to simply talking about
Informational outreach.
I completely agree with that from the perspective of branding, which is my background from a corporate perspective. I think that what I've seen, and that's why I'm here to learn what the Synod actually does and the leadership role of the bishops. I know we're community-led in the old Catholic Church. However, the community tends to be refugee Roman Catholics who just came in, listened, and left. And so there really isn't a lot of, I don't think, ideas on how to say, this is how we're going to expand, this is how we're going to brand ourselves, this is how we're going to get out there in the world. So I don't know if the Synod is the place with the combination of laity and the clergy to create a plan, but I love that idea of planning for sure, but also put a plan together with goals to hit along the way. And with that, I'm curious, what is the differentiation that what we put out there with regards to the Roman Church? And are we in a place now, the Old Catholic Church, because when we started, I felt like we were, like, let's do our thing, but whisper, because we don't have the Romans to bother us. And now it feels like there's a little bit more, we're here. So I feel like that's something to consider too.
These are good points.
Well said.
I think it's very important to plan and to have goals, but I think we also have to not be afraid to shift them or not go that way, because I know I've been in churches where we've made plans and say, okay, we are in a university community, therefore the group we need to go to is X. And it turns out the group we really need to go to is Y. So when Y shows up at your door, take them in. We have to plan or we're not going to be ready, but we have to be flexible in that planning, because the world's going to change in ways we can't predict.
Brother Ray?
I really like the letters that the bishops produce together, and I wish we could do some kind of press releases in our local
Yes.
communities.
Yes, very much so.
As I said, informational outreach is what'll get us to where we need to be. If people don't know who we are, what we are, where we are, how can we expect them to come in?
That's right.
That's what it's all about, and we can't be afraid to be who we are, because that's what makes us authentic, and that's what will bring people in.
Brother Ray?
Maybe invest in doing some ads on Facebook on our community page.
Ads are good, however, every study of religion of churches says that over 90% of people who come into any parish, any church community, because someone in that community invited them.
Yeah.
Having formal ads doesn't work if that's the only thing you do. You have to invite your family, you have to invite your neighbors, you have to invite your friends, and that's how people really come in. We do get people just wandering off the street, and that's wonderful that they're wandering off the street, but more often they come because someone invited them. So not only the services, but if you have fellowship dinners and other programs, invite someone outside of the group into it. Because sometimes we do fundraising, and the only people who talk to the fundraising are the people already there.
A lot of our community invite all their relatives.
Yeah, that's why it grows.
Richard, I think you had your hand up.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that before we do a bunch of outreach, there's a lot of listening that needs to happen before that. You know, listening to younger people, asking us what we want, listening to what our ideas are. I mean, all of that has to happen before, it's like if you invite a bunch of people to your church and then they show up and there's no innovation, there's nothing that relates to them, they're not gonna stay there. They're gonna have to do all the work to change that whole community. I mean, it's just a burden. It becomes a heavy weight. And so I think there's a lot of relationship building, of like, who are those people that are closest to you that can help to seed that stuff and like, just really use them as a resource.
I think on top of that, say, amen, first of all. Marty's statement, we're not going to be who we are today, really resonated with me because even when I look at my community, I'm serving them as a Catholic priest, Catholic. I'm meeting the people who are already there. I don't know who the people are on the outside, so they're still looking. Am I open to that? Or am I comfortable in wearing this collar and doing mass the way I do mass? Maybe that's not what we need to be doing. We just come up with a beautiful book, which are part of building. and it's carrying our tradition forward. But does that tradition need to be massaged and changed and opened up so we can accept people? My kids got to mass, and I don't force them. And I said, I'm looking to build a church. I have a little storefront. It's like, what's a multi-purpose? Can other people use it? They're looking for community, for something like John, not a building, not a church, not a guy with a collar, somebody they can relate to. You know, whenever
They feel part of it.
Yeah.
Carol?
I'm listening here. There are a lot of variables that come into play with each church. I know with Theobald, we are planted within a church, a Presbyterian church that's a very large church. It's struggling just like we are because their congregation is over 60 and they're failed. We're there because of a quid pro quo kind of thing going on, and our rent is free. Other churches have to come up with a large amount of money for space. I'm out in the community. We're out in the community, working in food pantries, working with children on a weekly basis, and I guess small is okay because we're doing what God has mandated us to do. And I'm okay with that. Yes, every pastor wants, 300, 400 in the church. I love to have that. But I love my community and what they're doing to feed the hungry, to go out and do Matthew 25. So it's a country. How are we going to do this? Again, the church where we're planted at, we're in a yuppie neighborhood. There are houses over 500, 600, 700,000, $1 million houses around us. So I don't think they're going to be showing up at this little bitty church. So our ministry is elsewhere, and to bring them in, that has been difficult. That has been very difficult. And of course, when they say, well, who's the pastor? But I got 100% Caucasians in my church. Black pastors meeting the congregation, meeting the people in black churches, there's music, there's preaching, there's a style. And we don't have that kind of style. Well, once in a while I come on with it. But there are things that when I ask a black person to come see what we're all about, what kind of music, what y'all singing over there? Okay. We're out to glory and praise and okay. So there's a lot of variables coming into play, and I don't know how to fix. If you fix this slot is going to decrease. So somebody help.
Can I circle back?
Sure.
Sort of goes in line with Reverend Carol, but something that Ingrid had talked about before with regard to branding. I have a marketing background, so when I heard the word branding, I sat right up. One of the things that we as bishops have to confront all the time is what's considered Old Catholic in one town is not Old Catholic in the next town. And a lot of people grab onto that Old Catholic name, but they're the farthest thing from Old Catholics. We have been so consistent in making sure that we follow Utrecht's model, and we're by the book. We're really by the book. But there are so many others out. I got a guy in my town, self-proclaimed, decided to be Old Catholic one day, and he has 8 clergy members, and if he has 6 parishioners on a Sunday, he's lucky. He just named himself the patriarch of the church.
Oh, there you go.
And he now has a crown and all the vestments and all that. But I come across people in Harrisburg, and when I say Old Catholic, some of them mention him, and I go, oh, no. I said, that's not Old Catholic. But that's something that we have to fight on a national level. All right?
Yes.
Yeah,
That's why we need the publicity.
in South Florida, you know how you go through towns and on one corner there's CVS and on the other corner there's Walgreens? And in South Florida, you can't pass a corner without having an old Catholic bishop and an old Catholic bishop or independent bishop on the other corner. Now, what they're doing in a lot of cases is exactly what you talked about, ordaining people in the backseat of the car or whatever, and they've got 6 or 8 or 12 clergy and 2 parishioners. So yeah, it is, and when you talk about branding, when you talk about, you know, visibility and getting people to understand, you know, one of the things that I love is the Old Catholic in 5 minutes that Bishop Steve created, a little sheet. What is Old Catholic in 5 minutes? And to me, this new book is.
I thought you said you could become Old Catholic in 5 minutes.
Some of those but yeah, and a good companion piece to it now is, and I'm not selling the book, but I'm saying this has really great information.
Don't forget, 2 for 10.
Yeah.
Can you share that? Because we tried in our own church to do elevator speech so that we would all have a consistent message of what, who and what we are.
Oh, yeah.
It was 10 people, there was 10 different views.
Right.
Kind of similar, but not. And we couldn't come to consensus. So,
I didn't know you had that.
yeah, that would be great.
Get one of those trucks. I got it.
Have you found that when you ask regular laity to describe the Old Catholic Church, the first 5 things are all the things we're not?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I've heard
Yeah,
that.
we're tired.
We're not under the Pope.
I'm
Yeah.
tired.
Right.
You know, is that the best you come up with? We're not under the Pope. You know?
But it's what, when there's a vacuum, people will fill it.
Yeah, I
And so it's this synod, I suppose, that has to create that messaging.
So does that answer your question, Rosemary Burdick?
Can I?
Well, my hand was up for several times, but, yes,
Thank
if
you.
we are Old Catholic, then we need to stop being, in essence, some of us Roman Catholic. We need to get that style of Old Catholic that Carol talked about. We are to be a people that go out to our community, meet our community's needs, and this will then hopefully bring them in. So yes and no, it answers my question. I also feel very strongly that we need to be a church that firmly stands for something. We need to have at least one of our bishops so involved in social justice that they come out with their letter. You know, I applaud you on your past two letters, but I certainly would have loved to have seen a letter or some statement about ICE and the deporting of the people. I certainly would have liked to have seen some letter come out about what we have done in Gaza. You know, standing for these things and standing for social justice is a way in which we will bring other people in. The only need for advertisement, please pardon me, is ourselves. It's ourselves. And how much of ourselves we are willing to put on the line. As a priest, we say at each Eucharist, we are bread, which is our life, blessed, which is our life, broken, and shared. And everybody is called to that as well. You know, so yes. I'm more concerned about John's question next.
Thank you, Rosemary. I do want to get, I have one response. So I think it was the idea that we can't do advertising or that we shouldn't. Although I will say, at least in Spirit of Hope, in the last 2 years, we have seen a drastic increase of people coming because we have a website. And that website is warm and welcoming and informative, and they click on it, right? So I know our personal invitation, believe me, I've worked on that for years as well. I know it's all very vastly important. But a good website that's fluid and current and you know, that's our battle, is trying to keep the website relevant and up to date and all that. I have found to be extremely important. But
I'd like to compliment you on that same point. We've had a couple of our parishioners that are well versed into website design and maintenance of it. And Dunedin is a community that is a tourist attraction location. So we get a lot of people from all over the world, throughout the country here, in particular. And they find us through our website. And then they are really taken to the service. And we just continue to grow, but it's because of making ourselves aware and reaching out and trying to be visible. So.
And along that same line, just to have a Google presence, you don't even have to have a website, just a Google presence. That's what I created when I started my small parish down in Gulfport. And we'll get people coming in on any given Sunday. And I was like, how did you find us? Well, we Googled and we found. And when they find us, they love us. And they may be only visiting, but they said, we'll be back next year. Sure. Maybe they will, maybe they won't.
One quick last comment, because we do have to stay on track. Yes, Mom?
Yeah. It strikes me every time my wife and I drive up to church, we go up a street called McMullen Booth, and there are 2 mammoth Christian churches. And they have 10-acre lots, and they've got like 400 or 500 cars parked in those lots. But if you listen to what goes as faith and preaching there, the pastor's preaching with a 5-pronged pitchfork, you know, and it's a message that's out everywhere that we have to counter. How do we do that?
I know we've got to do the time because of dinner, et cetera, but I think it would be important for us to lead with a question as well. And while it's a disappointment and a question at the same time, Jan shared the fact that there's a whole bunch of stuff that's happening. But she said, I see the Supreme Court just announced their decision to let Trump's effort to end birthright citizenship to go forward. So what role do you see for our churches in this political environment? I think that's a great question to carry even into lunch, into supper, and I think it's a great question. Also, yesterday, the Supreme Court issued a ruling against Planned Parenthood in South Carolina and said that they could refuse Medicare payments to Planned Parenthood for care, not just abortion care, but care.
And non-abortion, they don't refund abortion.
Right.
Refund like
Exactly. So, but now they pulled that. So if they can pull that in South Carolina, that would probably happen in other red states, and that's going to be a real mess. So we're just really in a crucial, critical time, I think.
Before we all meet, we haven't been good about doing our blessings before our meals. So Reverend Carol, I think you were asked to give the, here.
What am I supposed to do? You have to do the blessing.
Do the blessing
Oh, I have one. Okay.
before we can break for lunch.
This one's written out for me, but guess what?
Improvise.
Guess what? I set up last night So, here we go. And it's on the thing of what we're doing now. And let me explain to you. Black folk pray a long time. Gracious God, please give us eyes to see and ears to hear where our spirit is working. Help us to see every person the way that you see them. Break our hearts for what breaks yours. Let us not merely say that we love each other. Give us strength to mourn with those who mourn, to weep with those who weep. Let your justice roll like waters. Let your righteousness and love flow from us like rivers of living water. Purify our hearts, Lord, and fill us with genuine hunger for justice, for mercy, and for true peace. For every fork that we lift to our mouths, let us honor, let us remember the hunger, the justice, the mercy, and the truth that we proclaim. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. I just want to thank you, Lord. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, let the church say. Amen.
Thank you. Be back here in this room at 1:30.
Cheryl and Jan wrote, amen.
Great.
Right.
Turn off.